It's because I forgot. See, here's what I do. On YouTube, very often, I legitimately forget to unmute my microphone. And the funny thing is, I have a mute thing on the microphone. Like I have this little, I'll show you. For the microphone, I have this little, oh, I can't show you because it doesn't reach the camera. But I have this little control panel basically. And you can mute the mic on the control panel. And then you can also mute it. Hi, Joe, on like the streaming software. And I forget to sometimes I do that, and then I forget. Anyways. Ah. Hi, Jack the Rocky. Hi, Animal. Hi, Niels. Hi, Archer. Hi, Juju. And hi, hi, everyone. I'm sorry that I was muted from the beginning. This is a normal thing for me, it seems. Hi, Brandy. Hi, Prexis. Hi, everyone. So I'm going to start the live with a teensy weensy little bit of an announcement. I think that's I did put it in the like the what's it's called in the community tab, but I want to reiterate it. So for the next like week or two, my schedule is going to be a bit off, and I might not go live every evening. I might do it every other evening because so I'm trying to put the podcast back on track. And I'm trying to make it so that I can make it on my own without having to involve people because I can't involve people right now. Robbie is still out of commission for the podcast and for helping in any sort of way because he's just dealing with stuff. And yeah, so it's so I need to figure out how to produce the podcast on my own so I can put it out a couple of times a week and it's still informative and good and well produced without it like taking over all of my life. So the podcast is coming back. I want to say probably like aim for June 1st. Also, I am recording and conducting a series of interviews that I am really excited for you to hear, that I've been wanting to put out, that I've been wanting to record for a while. And so yeah, so I'm just like kind of overwhelmed with a lot of work behind the scenes, and I feel like if I don't, if I try to do these things, along with doing a live every night, because since most of you are in America, I try to do it at a time that's like after work for Americans. So that means that it's 11:46 for me right now, and that's like on an earlier side of my lives. And lately I've been trying to go to bed at 11 because I also started working out and like, living like a better schedule and sort of like, just kind of keeping myself healthy. So it's difficult. And I'm also trying to jumpstart a new project. And I'm kind of pitching it around because I really want it to happen. And there have been so many times that it almost happened and it didn't, or I didn't like necessarily like the production people because I don't want people to have sort of like control over and censorship over it. So anyways, I am just trying to like make a lot of things happen. And what usually ends up happening when I do that is once I start getting into like a work mode, I'm never in the middle. I'm like either 0 or 100, and I don't and if it's 100, then I basically work myself to the point of burnout. So I'm trying to not do that. And I'm trying to go to bed when I feel tired instead of like, like the day before yesterday, I was just incredibly tired and I really, really needed to go to bed. So, yeah, so there are things like that. So please bear with my schedule. And in the next week or so or two, I will be going live sort of like sporadic, not sporadically, but like it won't be every day. It might be like every other day instead, because I will be listening to my body and to when I need to sleep. Because otherwise I'm just going to burn out and then I'm going to like, and then I'm going to disappear for a while because I'm just not going to be able to do anything. I already feel like kind of creative burnout, which is why you haven't seen like a videos short form content from me on TikTok, because I have a really hard time like putting my thoughts together. So we're trying to fix that. Also, before we jump into the news, I will tell you a story that really like sort of inspired me today and made me believe in humanity again. So also today's Vishanka day. This is not a Vishanka, but this is a so Vishanka means something that's been embroidered, and it's an embroidered shirt. Vishivka is embroidery. Vishanka is a shirt that's been embroidered. That's what the meaning of the word is. Vishanka is a traditional Ukrainian garment, and if you stick around till the end of the live, I will show you a vishanka that I was gifted today that is just beautiful. It's very simple, but I usually struggle to find vishankas that I would wear myself. I love a lot of them, but as you know, I'm a very plain person who really does not like wearing a lot of color, and vishankas are usually colorful. So this one is very simple, and it's made to look like a Hutsul style vyshyvanka from, I believe, like the 19th or the 18th century. So I'll show it to you at the end of the live. But this is an embroidered, like traditional Ukrainian. How would you call hustka cat? It's like not a handkerchief, but oh wow, I'm forgetting English. What is this called? What is this called? Not a shawl, no. Sometimes like very wealthy people, they tie these things on their Birkin bags around the handle. It's not a scarf. Not a shawl, no. Um Hermes is known for they're like a square. Not an ascot. No. Cravat. No, you guys are using way too fancy of words for this. Wait. Um mm, yeah, I mean, I guess it's a scarf. Like, I don't know, like Hermes has them in silk. I don't yeah, I thought there was a word for it. That's not a scarf, but we'll go with the scarf because that's the easiest. But yeah, so this is like a cotton scarf basically, and yeah, yeah. They're very, very cute. And this is embroidered as well. As you can see, it has all of these like little embroidery details. Also, my light, I need to fix my lighting because it's been like really bad. And I don't know how to do it yet, but I'll figure it out. Um, a wrap. What about a headscarf? Yeah, 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 yeah. So it's similar. Yeah, you could technically do this with it. So it is a headscarf. Yeah, cool. Thank you. Um, but yes, so okay, let me just I don't know. This lighting like really bugs me. Like it really bugs me. It can't get any worse. Okay, so here's what we're gonna talk about before we start on the news. So one of my classmates, he is at the front line, and he is probably the only person from my class who serves in the military. I went to school in a small little, so it was a private school, and our classes were very small. So I went to school. In my year, there were 16 people, and we went to school together from first grade to graduation. Most of us. Some people did leave, and like one or two or three came in, but the majority of the student body was the same from first grade to graduation, so we all knew each other very, very well. Um so this classmate of mine, he serves, and his girlfriend that they've been together with for the past 14 years, I think. She's my really good friend. And so he got mobilized. He's at the front. He was serving sort of like in the rear in Mykolaiv because he's supposed to be only partially eligible for the military, but he was doing his job so well that they sent him into an assault reconnaissance unit, and he's now at the front in Donetsk direction. And he started a fundraiser, basically raising about $3,500 for various electronic warfare equipment. And that's not a small amount of money. So I was, and so it somehow it somehow so happened that most of my classmates, like, we don't stay in touch. We didn't end up being like a very tight knit unit after we graduated. A lot of people moved abroad. A lot of people sort of just went their own ways. And I independently and individually stay in touch with a couple of my classmates. And so I was like, I called Yulia and I was like, listen, let's create a group chat between all of our classmates and try to fundraise that amount of money because I'm sure that if we do, in some period of time, we would be able to accomplish that. And she was like, I don't know, like we don't really like stay in touch. I don't know if anyone would want to like help and stuff like that. And I was just kind of like, well, let's try. So I found the numbers of like the classmates that I have spoken to in the past like 13 years. And I found some old phone numbers on Telegram and I was like, oh, wow, they light up as like these numbers exist. So these people do have Telegram and they're on it. So I figured I would add them all to the chat and be like, hey, listen, let's like fundraise. So we ended up like raising some amount of money, but it was like very insignificant compared to the goal. And I was like, oh no, like what are we gonna do? And then one of my former classmates is like her husband is friends with our other classmate who he doesn't live in Ukraine for ages now. Like I think he like the same way as I did. I moved to the US 13 years ago. He moved out and he went to school in England and he hasn't really been like back to Ukraine that much and he has been like living a life abroad for a while and no one really stays in touch with him, not because there is anything wrong, but he's a very private person. He doesn't really have social media accounts. Like I've probably spoken to him maybe 5 times in the past 13 years, just like being like, oh hey, if I'm ever like in your city we'll get coffee. And he was like, yeah, if I'm ever in New York let's get coffee, but I didn't necessarily have like a way to reach out to him. And so my classmate's husband is friends with him, and he sent him the fundraiser, and the guy was like, "I'll close it. Like, I'll send the remaining amount of money," and that's like $2,000. That's like $2,000, which is like a big amount of money, but also, like the thing that made me kind of like renew my belief in humanity is that like it's someone who out of everybody probably stayed in touch the least and sort of like lives their own life for a very long time now and doesn't necessarily keep up with anyone, and then like just like a random friend of his sends him a fundraiser picture and goes like, hey, my wife's friend is your classmate and my wife is your classmate, and did you know that this guy is at the front, like you went to school with him and he's like fundraising right now. And so he you know it's like it was really sweet. And I like I messaged him and I thanked him. I went back to Facebook and so I don't really use Facebook, right? Because I don't like know my logins or anything. And I spent like a good 35 minutes trying to figure out how to like log back in. And so I did, and I like messaged him and I said thank you. And he asked to, be anonymous and asked like he was like, can we please like not, can we just not like say who it was outside of like the people that were affected by this donation, which is like one person, right? And he was like, can we just please like keep it, on the down low, and I would like to remain as like anonymous as possible, which like, yeah, sure, his right. But yeah, but I just like, which is why I'm like so awkward at telling this story because I don't know what's too much to say. But it was just very sweet, and I don't know, it was like a very, very nice thing for someone to do. And yeah, I don't know. It's like, I meet a lot of people that barely have any means and do absolutely everything that they can and outside of their realm of possibilities. And I meet a lot of people that have a lot of means and don't do anything. So it's very, very nice sometimes to see someone who has a lot of means really use those means for a good purpose, So yeah. So it was just like a really nice thing and a really sweet thing and a thing that like made me really happy. And I wanted to share because it was just sort of like, this one kind of like big drop of like, oh wow, that's so nice in like my day. And I called Yulia, I called my classmate, and I was like, hey, you the fundraiser is going to be closed on Monday. And she's like, how do you know that? And I'm like, well, because this and that happened, and this person is going to like send the remaining amount, but this person doesn't have a bank account in Ukraine, so basically they need like a moment to figure out how to transfer the money here. And um and uh and I was like, yeah, and this is what's going to happen. And like they just, they were like so like pleasantly surprised and really grateful, and it was just like a very sweet thing. And yeah. So that's that. And I thought it was a very, very nice thing to do. And I really wanted to share because I just couldn't get over it. But yeah. Hi Diane. It's certainly a morale raiser for sure. Yeah, it's a huge morale raiser. It's like, I don't know, it made me so happy. Okay. Well, with that said, our fundraiser for the HUR unit for drones is at $4,145.84. Um, yeah. So you did $4,145.84, which is so nice. Thank you very much, you guys. And so yeah, so if you would like to donate to the fundraiser, here is the link that I just put on on the screen on YouTube. And Jean, or Jean. Hello, John Ervosis wants you to join him on his show again. Like right now? I don't wait. John is not live. I don't think he's live. Is he live? But I would, yeah, I would happily do that. I just I have to go through the news right now. Why would you need an account in Ukraine to donate to a fund? It's not a fund. My classmate is an individual who is fundraising for his unit. So it's an individual, and you would need to, like send the money to his monobank jar. And that would be, you know that would be oh, one sec. Wait, already oh, I see. Yeah, for some reason it's 7:20. I'm sorry guys. I don't know. Also on YouTube my resolution is really bad, and yeah, I don't know why 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 it happened so. Annette, but you couldn't use PayPal. I mean, look, so I think that, I mean, Mikhailo has a PayPal, but also with amounts of money that large, when they come to your bank account without it being through a fundraiser, it's a problem because the IRS of Ukraine is going to ask you lots of questions. So he has a monobank jar, and a monobank jar shows that this fundraiser particularly is for a specific thing for the military. So when you deposit the money into the jar, the IRS has no questions for you. They can just ask you for receipts for like what you have gotten if they find something suspicious. So if someone were to PayPal him that money and he were to just deposit it straight to his bank account, which is like what, $2,000 at once, that would raise some eyebrows. And of course, he can show like, hey, look, this is a fundraiser. This is like my classmate who sent it from abroad, whatever. But that takes time, and that takes days, and that takes like a mini investigation. So usually it's like a day or two or three, but that's still not like ideal, because when you're trying to buy military gear, it's just better to do that. Also, like, they might think it's income, so they might tax it. It's like a whole, it's a whole thing. It's just better to do it through there. And he figured out how to do it by Monday, so you know it will work. Also, Chad, thank you so much. We just got a donation of $100, which brings us to one second, which brings us to $4,245.84. Also, we got thank you. We got $5.69 from Archer, which brings us to $4,251.53. Finally, see you live. Oh, yay! Hi. Also to the John Aravosis live stream. I don't know. Wait, 6 p.m. 6 p.m. US is +7. That's 1 a.m. here. I mean, I will still likely be live streaming, but in the middle of the news. And if John is live at like 6, I could do it. But if it's like 6:30 or 7, I like so that will be 2 a.m. my time, and I try to go to bed by 1:30 if I do live, because otherwise I just die. And because it's really late here, and I'm really trying to keep my schedule, because I've been going to bed by like 11, and it's been so lovely because I wake up at 8 and I feel refreshed, and I don't wake up at like 11 wanting to die. So uh so I can do that. I will text him a little closer to 6. I would love, I love John, and I love, I love talking to John, so I'm just like trying to, the gears in my head are trying to turn. So yeah. Okay, Grumpy, don't be rude. Don't be mean. There is literally zero reason to be mean right now, Grumpy. Like, don't be mean. He's pretty on time at 6 every night. Yeah, yeah, that's the thing. He is. No, no, no. I just meant like if but yeah, but he needs to like do the introductions. He needs to talk to people. Um and so it's like I don't know if he wanted to like talk to me at 6 or at like 6:30, like so yeah. Grumpy, I get that, but like, okay, but without jokes, like that alienates people sometimes, because when you're mean to people for no reason, like some people will just leave because there genuinely wasn't a reason to be mean. And I don't like that. I don't like being mean to people for no reason. Like, they're not trolls, and they're not coming in here like shitting on anything. They're just quite a few different people that probably heard John Aravosis asking if I could join his live. And so they decided to be nice and come over here and ask me. And so there is no reason to be mean to them or rude to them. And I really don't like that, Grumpy. Like, I don't. And I don't want that attitude to people that are not meaning anything bad. Oh, hi, John. Speaking of the devil, hello, John. Okay. So, I saw people mentioned you, and I said, "Tell Yulia we'd love to have her back." Oh yeah. Um, how about should we? If you're live tomorrow, I would love to come up, because I haven't been live for 2 days, so I still hi Frank. So I have so much news to go over. But if you're live tomorrow and you want to have a chat tomorrow, I would love to join, because I think tonight I need to go to bed. Like, I'm gonna do the news as efficiently as I can, and I need to go to bed. um, Cup at the end of it for. Oh, hi, Drew. And hi, Sam. Hi, everybody. Good to see you here, and hi again, Frank. Okay, so the U.S. gives Ukraine an additional $2 billion in military funding through a new defense industry fund. Anthony Blinken announced right now. The fund was created to purchase weapons from other countries. So, hi, Darlene. You know what's interesting? So, this is Anthony Blinken was in Kyiv, and there is a video making rounds on the internet of Anthony Blinken with his guitar in a in a bar in Kyiv, singing songs and like literally having the time of his life. And it is the funniest thing I have seen, because most politicians or like most people are like, Kyiv is dangerous. We can't go to Ukraine during the war. Like it's a war zone, which like it is dangerous. Listen, like, a missile can hit, air defense doesn't always work. And also shrapnel, shrapnel falls and it damages buildings, and so does debris and stuff from the intercepted missiles and drones. But it's just watching Anthony Blinken at a bar on stage playing guitar and going crazy is just freaking hilarious. Hi, Brian. Actually, in fact, let me try and find you this video. It was on Kyiv Independent, and I thought it was like the funniest thing on the like I was like, wow, look at that guy. Hi, Brian. he's having a swell time. Where was that? Anthony Blinken 1 day ago. It's just Kyiv Independent posts so many oh. U.S. Secretary of State Anthony Blinken performed Rocking in the Free World by Neil Young alongside the band 1999 at the Barman Diktat bar in Kyiv. Blinken arrived in Kyiv earlier on May 14th, marking the first time a senior U.S. official has visited Ukraine since Congress approved a long-awaited $61 billion military aid package for the country last month. I find it so freaking funny that this is how Blinken chose to spend his time in Kyiv. I wish I could see that. Like, I wonder if that bar must have been like, closed for a private event or something, because there is zero chance that it was just like a random bar and random visitors got to see Anthony Blinken perform on stage. Like that's too dangerous. But oh my God, I would give so much to see this just because it's so freaking funny. We're going to provide an additional $2 billion in foreign military financing to Ukraine. And we've combined that into a first-of-its-kind defense enterprise fund. And it has 3 components, Blinken said. During the press conference with the Secretary of State Anthony Blinken, Kuleba noted that Ukraine still needs a total of 7 Patriot batteries. He noted that 2 of these batteries were needed literally yesterday to ensure protection of the Kharkiv region. The city of Kharkiv and the entire Kharkiv region is now the focus of our efforts to make the lives of Kharkiv residents safer and to maintain our position in the Kharkiv region under pressure from the Russians, the minister said. According to him, there is a possibility of transferring these batteries, and work is now underway to ensure that this happens as soon as possible. Also, Patriot batteries are not the only thing we need, obviously, but here is one thing that no one seems to think about at all. First of all, the US could produce Shaheds. Iran, or a Shahed alternative. Iran is not a super technologically advanced country, and they are producing Shaheds like there is no tomorrow. So is Russia by Iranian technology. Now, Ukraine's production of drones could never amount to that of Russia's, but Russia's production of drones could never amount to that of the US. And I think one of the things that we're going to see Ukraine lobbying for from the US is streamlining the production of drones in the United States, because those are cheaper and they're easy to make and they're easy to transfer. And we could overwhelm Russia and Russian air defense and Russian artillery as well. So I think that what we should be expecting to see in the nearest future is Ukraine and the US having negotiations on production of drones. Because genuinely, the US could knock Russia out of the ballpark if the US started producing an alternative to Shaheds. And they could probably supply Ukraine with a lot of those. So that's something interesting. Ukraine must make its own decision on negotiations with Russia. We will support Kyiv in any case, U.S. Secretary of State Anthony Blinken noted. Well, because Russia is again trying to put in this narrative of negotiations and how Ukraine needs to negotiate and how Russia wanted to negotiate. Actually, there is a fantastic video by Dmytro Kuleba, and he explained the most popular Russian propaganda and what this propaganda sort of has been trying to put in people's heads. And I see this as a very popular narrative. And I know that we all encounter this from trolls, from like Russian sympathizers, from people that don't know what the hell they're talking about, from people who love to, shit on Ukraine. I guess there is no better way to say it. So I'm going to show you a video from Dmytro Kuleba that was posted to his Twitter. And he talks about exactly about how this whole idea of like, oh, Russia was ready to negotiate and it's Ukraine and like Boris Johnson that like decided not to negotiate with Russia, and that's why this all is happening. He has a fantastic response to that, and I want to show it to all of you because, I know that a lot of us encounter this narrative, and this is just a very good tool to know how to combat that narrative. So here it is. 1 second. Okay.
Full story does not.
Okay, 1 sec. Here.
I sometimes hear people say that Ukraine and Russia were close to a peace deal in spring 2022, but Ukraine rejected it. And this, in their view, is why the full-scale war drags on for a third year. Well, this is one of the favorite lies promoted by Russia and its sympathizers. A closer look at the facts demonstrates that the whole story does not hold water. And it will take me under 4 minutes to prove it. But first, ask yourself, why is Russia promoting this story? The answer is easy. By focusing the public on the Istanbul talks, Russians try to shift the blame for the war in the middle of Europe from themselves, the aggressor, to Ukraine, the attacked country. They want people to forget that it was Russia that started the full-scale war in February 2022 and instead focus on the talks at the end of March 2022. By shifting the focus, they are trying to tell everyone, see, Russia actually wanted peace. It was Ukraine that rejected it. Absurd. If Russia wanted peace, it should never have attacked Ukraine in the first place. Yes, it is true that Ukrainian and Russian delegations have met since the early days of the invasion. They indeed discussed ways to end it. But the positions were so far away and Russian demands were so bizarre that the prospect of a real solution was not even remotely in sight. The draft documents leaked in the press simply reflect that discussion, but cannot be considered a real deal. Every diplomat knows nothing is agreed until everything is agreed. And it is very certain that nothing was agreed in March or April 2022. The idea of Russian and Ukrainian presidents holding talks was indeed discussed, but Russia rejected it. Other people sometimes say that the UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson came to Kyiv and pressed President Zelensky not to make a peace deal with Russia. This is a very funny story. First, anyone who has ever met President Zelensky knows that he is not the person who can be pressured into any decision. Second, because the process of talks between delegations actually continued throughout April and even May, well beyond Johnson's visit. It doesn't really match this story, does it? So who actually ruined the prospect of peace? Was it Boris Johnson or Volodymyr Zelensky? No. This person's name is Putin. He has been ruining peace in Ukraine for more than a decade. First, by occupying Crimea and parts of the Donbas in 2014. Then, by obstructing the Minsk and Normandy peace processes. Then, by launching full-scale aggression, and then by refusing to end it. This is why the war drags on. Only together can we stop Russia and put an end to its aggressive plans for the rest of Europe. For this to happen, Keep supporting Ukraine and don't buy Russian lies.
So yeah, I think this is he like summarized these points very well, and I really wanted to show this video so like next time someone says something as stupid as like, "Oh, Russia wanted peace talks and Ukraine is the one that ruined it, or Boris Johnson ruined it, or like I don't know, aliens ruined it." The only people who ruined peace are Russians and Putin, and they're the people that screwed up the possibility of peace talks to begin with, because well, first and foremost, they invaded Ukraine and they were trying to like negotiate a peace deal without any negotiations. They just put out demands. And these demands were, like super unfavorable to Ukraine, and they wouldn't negotiate because it's Russia and they just do what they want. Also, let me try and refocus my lens on YouTube, because I think the reason why it's so bad is also because my focus is really off. Okay, so yeah, so that's kind of where we're at with that, and I thought it was a very useful video, and Kuleba just sort of um Kuleba just summarized these points very well, and put emphasis on just very simple, like a very simple way to refute these Russian talking points. Also, while Dmytro Kuleba was giving his speech on our screen, Jason S. What? Why is this? Why am I so bad with technology? Jason S. from YouTube donated $100 to the fundraiser, which brought us to $4,351.53, which is awesome. So yeah, so I really hope that this oh, thank you, DW. Oh, thank you. I hope that this really helps you guys in combating stupid Russian talking points. Grumpy did mention that they also tried to poison the Ukrainian delegation. So yes, there was an attempt at poisoning the Ukrainian delegation, but and it's very evident that who else would do that? Russia. But at the same time, like, there is no evidence that proves that. Like, beyond reasonable doubt, so I wouldn't use that because you can't really prove it. But yeah, that also happened. And yeah, but trolls are not gonna, that's not going to be a good talking point for trolls. Not that anything is a good talking point for trolls, but I feel like cold hard facts are the best way to go. Blinken avoided a direct answer on whether the United States would allow American weapons to be used in Russian territory, but reiterated that the United States does not object in principle to strikes against the Russian Federation. We have made our policy clear, but this is a decision that Ukraine has to make, and we will make sure that Ukraine has the weapons it needs to succeed on the battlefield. Which to me sounds kind of like, yes, we are letting Ukraine strike the Russian territory, but we can't say that because, because we can't. Because this is not a no. And before that, it was a flat out no. So now it's kind of like, I can neither confirm nor deny this statement. Russian troops struck the central part of Kherson with airstrikes. There were casualties, reported the head of the regional military administration, Prokudin, and that is why we need Patriot batteries. The Secretary of State noted that the United States is now intensely focused on providing Ukraine with Patriot air defense systems and other equipment. Earlier in the day, Blinken toured a drone factory and watched as American aid was unloaded in a warehouse. A drone factory. I wonder why he was touring a drone factory. Maybe it's because, just like I said recently, there is going to be a push for the US to start manufacturing a Shahed alternative. I don't know. In Slovakia, after an off-site meeting of the government, an unknown person opened fire. The media reports that Prime Minister Fico was wounded. He was being taken to the hospital, and that happened yesterday. That was a very big thing. So I'm sure you've seen the video of this, but it was basically like someone, a random shooter, shot at Fico or Fiso or Fis. You know what? I don't care to pronounce his name right because he's just such a crap politician. Um, and he's just a Russian shill who clearly who said literally that Slovakia will block Ukraine's membership in NATO. So yeah, and in the EU. So lovely, right? But yeah, so he was shot at. And Volodymyr Zelensky made a very clear statement about that. He said the attack on Slovakia's Prime Minister Robert Fico is appalling. We strongly condemn this act of violence against our neighboring partner state's head of the government. Every effort should be made to ensure that violence does not become the norm in any country, form, or sphere. We sincerely hope Robert Fico recovers soon and express our solidarity with the people of Slovakia. He was also allegedly, according to Slovakian press, like pretty severely injured, and his condition was difficult when he was taken to the hospital. I mean, like it was a pretty close range shot, so it's not uncanny that was the case. But at the same time, like, I mean, as a Ukrainian person looking at a fascist far right leader being shot in Slovakia is kind of inspirational. So, is there any truth that Fico had connections to a murder of a journalist? I don't know, but I will say this, that this is a very Russian tactic. It's a very Soviet tactic, and this is something that they did even in Ukraine in early, like late 90s, early 2000s, right? Is that journalists that were highlighting corruption, that were highlighting problems with the government, were being murdered or because they couldn't be silenced. So I think that if there is information like that, it is entirely possible because this is not something out of the ordinary to do for these super Soviet mentality governments that use the Russian way of dealing with problems. So, yes, I would not be surprised. But I can't say because it's just not something that, that we have any proof of. President Zelensky said that Ukrainian troops partially stabilized the situation in Kharkiv region. According to the president, special attention is now being paid to the Pokrovsk district in the Donetsk region and Kupiansk in the Kharkiv region. Here, the Russians are trying to distract Ukrainian forces and make the fighting less concentrated. We are responding exactly as needed. We need to have something to respond to the enemy in any direction, Zelensky said. Also, here is a video of Russians literally shooting grads from a highway in Kharkiv region. Wait 1 second. I'm going to show it to you over there. Yep, and then I'm going to show it to you over here. And these are civilian cars waiting for it to stop so they can pass on their way to wherever it is that they were going. Yeah, Russian MLRS Grad is shelling the Kharkiv region directly from a highway, and peaceful Russians are obediently waiting in traffic for the shelling to end. The number of injured from the airstrike in the center of Kherson increased to 17, of which 15 were hospitalized. Also, if you want to know a little more about how journalists were being dealt with by like Russianized / Sovietized governments, there is this person, and I am going to write his name. I don't necessarily know how to transliterate it properly, but if you look it up, you will find it. Look up this name that I just put in the chat. It's Georgi Gangadze. And he was a Ukrainian journalist of Georgian descent, and he was uncovering corruption schemes that Kuchma, the second president of Ukraine, was running. Kuchma is a president against whom we had a huge demonstration in Kyiv. It was like, it's something that not a lot of people talk about, but it was like an anti-Kuchma protest, and it was huge. And that's something that prevented him from taking over the country. He basically wanted to enact this law that would give a president unhinged power. And he kind of wanted to be like the Putin of Ukraine, but the Ukrainian people didn't let that happen. Our government right now is a parliamentary presidential republic, which means the parliament has more power than the president does. So Kuchma wanted to make it so that the president would have unhinged power, and it would be a presidential parliamentary republic, right? But with most of the power being behind the president, and the parliament is sort of just there. And we didn't let that happen. But so Georgi Gangadze was a journalist who was uncovering all the corruption in Kuchma's government. He was uncovering all of Kuchma's wrongdoings and all of his like crazy political ambitions and all of this stuff. And he paid for it with his life. He was murdered, and his head was sent to his next of kin. And there is a tape that incriminates Kuchma and basically suggests that he was the one who ordered this murder, but there is not enough evidence. And so this is a very typical way of people with the Russian mentality and sort of trained by the Russian government and the Russian system. This is a very typical way of dealing with problems. So, yes, I would not be surprised if Fitzo was involved in a journalist's death. Also, news reported that exposed Zelensky was killed in Egypt. You don't say anything about that. Sorry, news reporter that. First of all, someone came in and copied a handle of another YouTube user. Second of all, who was killed in Egypt? What? Putin is preparing physical attacks on Western countries, according to the head of Britain's Center for Government Communication, Anna Kist Butler, in comments to The Telegraph, or Butler. Hi, Mark. Привет, joining from New Jersey. Oh, hi. Maria Lachuk. Hi, nice to meet you. Welcome. Since being appointed to head Britain's radio intelligence service last May, Kist Butler has insisted that there is a real threat from the Kremlin. Why wouldn't there be? Hi, Karen. First, Kist Butler insisted that Moscow was nurturing and inspiring cyber criminal groups and in some cases appears to be coordinating physical attacks against the West. She noted that the Russians now want to go beyond cyber attacks. Yeah, it makes sense. I wouldn't say that they would be like large attacks. I would say that they would be provocations. And that's something that Russia can do very well. There are so many Russians and Russian citizens and Russian spies, genuinely, and I do not mean that conspiratorial. Conspiratorial. I mean that in a very reasonable way. There are lots of Russian spies that are integrated into Western societies and that are there. There is this true crime podcast. And I keep forgetting what the name of it is. And I will look it up for you if you guys remind me. But it was basically a podcast that was interviewing these Russian. So they're Russian secret agents, but they're basically like escorts, right? So they are being sent to the US and to the UK and to other countries. They're being given huge budgets, nice apartments, a very beautiful wardrobe. They're being trained in these, like, in proper manners and stuff like that. And their assignment is to seduce men in power that are politicians, that are owners of large corporations, and to literally manipulate them and steer them towards things beneficial for Russia. And their assignment is literally like the bit that I remembered very well from this podcast was this woman say it's a huge investigation, and they interviewed one of these women, and she basically said it's because men are vulnerable when it's like you can do anything to a man when you're having sex with him or something like that. And they're basically weaponizing these beautiful, educated, smart, like trained women to manipulate men in power. And that, that's just one example of what Russia does and how Russia does it and how their information warfare works. It's not just trolls on the internet. No, no, no. It's integrating professors in universities in Eastern European studies and giving them grants to establish their own sort of programs and and to make these Eastern European studies basically be the Russian narrative studies. It's the Russian churches, it's the Russian cultural centers, it's the Russian journalists, it's the Russian musicians, it's the Russian socialites, it's everything. And you would think this sounds crazy because who would have such a network of agents that seem like regular people? And the answer is Russia. We literally underestimate Russia and how much of these crazy, like out of this world sort of like movie sounding scenarios are genuinely real. US intelligence says that the Kremlin has stepped up its disinformation game against Zelensky. Yeah, it has been stepping it up for the past year. Russian disinformation emphasizes two issues: the withdrawal of Ukrainian forces from Avdiivka and the postponement of the presidential elections in Ukraine. Moscow is trying to present the withdrawal as a step that is not a strategic decision for motives, but pursues other motives. And speaking of elections, the Russians are trying to fuel the thesis that Zelensky is illegitimate. And yeah, Russia has been weaponizing Avdiivka, and Russia has been trying to make Avdiivka into this sort of major defeat for Zelensky as the president. And they are trying to push this narrative that Zelensky, at the end of the day, wants to give Ukraine to Russia, and all of this charade is for Western money. We don't get money; we get tanks and weapons. So unless he's collecting them in his backyard and then plans on selling them on the black market, I don't know what the fuck they're on about. But also, like, it's this huge disinformation campaign. And the thing is, while Ukrainians were a lot harder to fool in the beginning of the invasion, because well, we were, inspired. There weren't blackouts. It wasn't 2 years of the full scale war. People weren't nearly as emotionally exhausted and as emotionally vulnerable. And it's much, much easier to target people now and to push these narratives. And one of the things that I'm actually thinking of doing is I'm thinking of also creating maybe like a Ukrainian speaking podcast, a political one that would also explain disinformation and how it works and do like sort of a fact checking thing for Ukrainian audiences as well, because I think that there is so much bullshit and so much stuff that is I think honestly Russia right now um focuses more effort on poisoning Ukrainian info space than it does on poisoning the international info space, because what they've realized, and I've said this a million times and I will say it again, that they can't take down our government, but we can. And they're wholeheartedly trying to make it happen. Sweden has announced its readiness to use the US nuclear weapons in the event of a Russian attack on NATO. Prime Minister Ulf Kristersson told Sveriges Radio. According to him, there is no need to take such a step in peacetime, but in the worst case scenario, democratic countries should be able to protect themselves from states that might threaten with nuclear weapons. If there is a war in our territory in which Sweden is involved, the situation is completely different. Then all And then all NATO countries will benefit from the nuclear umbrella that should exist as long as Russia has nuclear weapons, he emphasized. And he's very right. That's the thing. It's like it's a security assurance in its own, right? And also, here's the thing: Russia does have nuclear weapons. We've talked about it multiple times. And for those of you who are new, who are joining here, I'm so sorry. I'm not going to be nearly as informative today as I usually am, because in the beginning of this stream, I was explaining that I'm trying to put together 3 separate content content things, one of which is a podcast, one of which is a whole channel, and one of which is going back to interviews. And so I've been working really hard behind the scenes because I want to put out as much useful information as possible, and I'm back to just being a one woman show without like no help in terms of production and all of these things, which is okay. But the point is that I am exhausted and I've been taking days off, which I normally don't because my lives are usually nightly, and this is one of the few weeks or months that I'm trying to do them like every other night, simply because I'm just exhausted. um Oh, Ozzy, I'm so sorry because the air raid was about an hour, and then I had and then I simply had to start getting ready for, for the day because I had to do stuff. I'm so sorry. Uh, but yeah, so I'm sorry for those of you who are new, but normally, I do talk about I do talk extensively about these things. I will try to summarize it quickly, but Russia's nuclear weapons have not been maintained properly, and most of them are not going to work the way that they're intended to. Also, Russia's nukes don't work the same way as the U.S. nukes. The president doesn't just push the red button, and um and that's it. It's like in Russia, there is a chain of command of 9 people, and all of those 9 people have to sign off on using the nuke. And they understand what that means, and they understand that nukes are mutually assured destruction. They also understand that these nukes are not in their prime and they have not been maintained, and more likely than not, the majority of them does not work as it's intended to. So no one's going to risk firing them because they can simply, cause more damage to Russia, while the US nukes are very well maintained. So yeah. Also, the largest topic of today are the protests in Georgia. How many of you understand what has been going on in Georgia? So a couple of weeks ago, I have shown you a video that I've recorded months and months ago that explains the foreign agent laws in Georgia and what they mean. Hi, Elizabeth. And since it looks like there are quite a few new people here, I might play this video for you again because I want to explain to you why this is the current situation in Georgia. So, Russians often say, we are not our government. Like, you are putting the blame for what our government does on regular Ukrainian people and on regular Russian people. And that's not fair because, again, we are not our government. And then they say, we can't do anything because, the government just like sends police after us and they beat us up. So in Georgia, the police has been doing horrendous stuff to protesters. I mean, horrendous stuff. Like, they show up at their homes, they arrest them, they threaten them, they blackmail them, they do all of this ridiculous, ridiculous stuff. And you know what Georgians keep doing? They go back to the streets and they protest harder. If someone at a Georgian protest gets hurt, more Georgians come out and stand together with that person. That is, we are not our government. When you don't do anything against your government, You are your government. But so you guys, this video is, I want to say 13 minutes long, and I'm going to play it for you because it summarizes everything that's been happening in Georgia. And it explains to you exactly what the foreign agents law is. I did show it to you before, but a lot of you weren't here. So I'm going to. Oh my gosh, stop. Why does it do that? Okay. It just sort of like played the thing without my consent. 1 second. What's going on in Georgia? So this is the video. Sorry, it's super annoying music that is on the
Hi and
ad.
welcome back. This is a breaking news report. There have been mass protests going on in Georgia, and a lot of you are very confused as to what's happening. So I'm here to clarify it for you. Hi, my name is Yulia, and you're watching the Breaking News Brief, where we talk about important developing stories worldwide. Let's go.
Okay, I'm going to.
Has been a question that I've received
here.
so much this week. So let's take a look into it. First and foremost, I'd like to point out that the country we know as Georgia is actually called Sakartvelo. With that, protests are currently taking place in Tbilisi, the capital of the country, due to the parliament's approval on the controversial bill about foreign agents. In Tbilisi, protesters clashed with security forces in front of the parliament building. Tear gas and water cannons were used
So
against
this was
the
a year
participants.
ago when it
The
just
president
started.
of Georgia, while in the USA, canceled all meetings and prepared an address to the population. The current government of Georgia, Sakartvelo, is largely pro-Russian. And the Russian influence is believed to be the reason behind this law coming into place. Just like in the Russian scenario, the government ordered violent crackdowns on the protesters. Special forces stormed those who gathered under the parliament. Light noise grenades, water cannons, and tear gas were used against them. Brutal detentions were noted as well. People were pulled out of the crowd, as seen in this video. The Georgian police worked strictly according to the Moscow model. Meanwhile, the president of Georgia, Salome Zurabishvili, who seems to be pro-European, supported the protesters and their demands. In her interview with CNN, she called on the Georgian authorities to refrain from using force. And by force, I mean there have been instances of using traumatic weapons with rubber bullets against the civilian population. The authorities must understand that they have the last chance to close the gap between them and the population, which is becoming even wider. They have one last chance to demonstrate that they're not some pro-Russian force. They have the last chance to show in their statements that they're pro-European and not empty talk, and that Europe is the direction in which they are moving. Meanwhile, the representatives of the opposition at the rally informed that the protesters are intending to prevent the deputies from entering the parliament for their meeting on March 9th. Since the current Georgian government is incredibly pro-Russian, they're also anti-Ukrainian, and it has also become known that they want to strip the representatives of the Georgian Legion, which is one of the largest foreign legions in Ukraine, of their citizenship upon returning home. The commander and founder of the Georgian Legion, Mamuk Mamulashvili, said this in an interview with Suspilna. The Prime Minister of Georgia, Irakli Garibashvili, said that those who fight in Ukraine should be stripped of their citizenship. This is a clear directive from the Kremlin to stop the flow of volunteers going to the Georgian Legion. In my opinion, the Georgian government today fully cooperates with Moscow, is controlled from there, and of course, creates problems for us. Now, the Georgian Legion right now is made up of about 1,000 volunteers, 500 of whom are Georgian. It gained notoriety on Twitter for its association with NAFO. NAFO is an organization of people who donated any amount of money to the Georgian Legion in support of them and received an avatar in the form of a meme of Shiba Inu dogs. I know, it sounds weird, but stay with me. Those participating and with the avatar are called fellas. And fellas are basically shit posters who fight the Russian propaganda online. Anyone with free time and a couple of dollars to donate to the Georgian Legion can join. And actually, today, someone from our community, Fella McCrunches, I'm going to pay tribute to you here, has made me an honorary NAFA member with this awesome, really, really cool Fella avatar. Yes, that is my hair and my glasses. And yes, she's wearing a cardigan. And yes, I love it. So thank you very much. And I'm sorry for this interruption for a positive piece of news amid a very serious talk. But I had to. It's so cool. And anyways, this is the story of how the Georgian Legion became one of the most notorious foreign legions in Ukraine. The population of Georgia in general supports Ukraine tremendously, and that is evidenced by the fact that the anthem of Ukraine was played at the protest in Tbilisi. Have a listen. Of course, we support them back. President Volodymyr Zelensky has confirmed that on behalf of the whole country in his past 2 evening addresses. So, Georgia, we stand with you, and we know how tough the fight for freedom is. We believe in you. You're incredibly brave, and what we have seen you do is amazing. We know that you're going to prevail, and we know that you are going to win. And with that, let's go over in detail of why this is happening. The Parliament of Georgia adopted a new law on the transparency of foreign influences, but the law itself is not very transparent. Stay with me, you'll understand. The law in its current form threatens civil society organizations and mass media with negative consequences for many Georgians who benefit from their activities. The law is incompatible with EU values and standards. This contradicts Georgia's stated goal of becoming a member of the European Union, which most Georgian citizens support. And as President Zurabishvili called it, it's an unnecessary law that did not come out of nowhere but was dictated by Moscow, telling protesters that she was standing next to you because you're very people who represent free Georgia today. The Georgia which sees its future in Europe and will not let anyone take this future away from it. The bill was largely criticized as posing a potential chilling effect for the civil society of the country, especially for the NGOs and new organizations with links to Europe. The bill will impede on the freedom of expression. The Foreign Agents Bill seeks to marginalize and discredit the foreign-funded groups that are independent and media that serves the wider public. Georgia, as a former Soviet republic, has played a balancing act between its pro-European citizens and its proximity to Russia and its super pro-Russian government. Former Russian President Dmitry Medvedev said in 2011 that had Russia not invaded Georgia in 2008, NATO would already be on its territory. The invasion only lasted a couple of days, but it appeared to have the same pretext as the invasion of Donetsk and Luhansk in Ukraine. In the last few years, and especially over the past 18 months, Georgia's leading coalition has made a couple of very questionable moves that are distancing it from the West and bringing it closer to Russia. So, what is this law? It's a draft law, and here are its requirements. A business must register as a foreign agent with the government if it is under the control, order, or request of a foreign power, acting under the control, order, or request of a person directly or indirectly, in whole or in major part controlled or financed by a foreign power. This means all credit card companies and banks, including local ones with foreign capital, would have to register. Similarly, all Georgian foreign businesses such as McDonald's, Carrefour, Nestle, Samsung would have to register as foreign agents as well, as they provide assets in the interest of the foreign power. This will undermine foreign investment and seriously impede the ease of doing business in Georgia. Many members of the parliament and other government officials would have to register as foreign agents. Under the draft law, one must register as a foreign agent if they act as a political advisor, which includes informing on the issues of Georgia's domestic and foreign policies. Therefore, when a foreign corporation requests that a member of parliament or other government official provides information about the regulatory environment for foreign investment in Georgia, the official must register as a foreign agent if they provide that information. Similarly, a government official would need to register if a foreigner emailed them a request to answer a simple question, such as whether women could vote in Georgia. Yikes, that is incredibly restrictive, and that is just aimed at controlling the population. But anyways, here's the law's potential impact. The law claims that it'll ensure transparency, especially surrounding foreign influence. However, in actuality, it would subject a large portion of regular Georgians to possible criminal liability, expose personal data, and violate the privacy of many people. Additionally, it would enable government officials to use its provisions at its own discretion, facilitating corruption and unwarranted harassment of people and businesses. Many Georgians would have to register and meet the super intrusive requirements. The draft law would require any Georgian employed by foreign-owned companies or organizations to register as a foreign agent. This also applies to Georgians living and working abroad. If they send money to their family members in Georgia, they could be considered foreign powers, and their family members could be regarded as foreign agents. Further, the information provided when registering as a foreign agent will be made available to the public on a government website, and if the people fail to register and meet reporting requirements, they could face criminal prosecution. While the law would require many ordinary Georgians to register, it doesn't require one interesting thing. A Russian spy, for example, would be exempt from registering under a proposed act, as it exempts any foreign public official. How convenient.
Okay, pull up Katya's KGB personnel file.
No, but darling,
Gosh, it'll show you've been disavowed by the KGB, and then mother will, yes, gasp, because she'll be so confused.
All in all, this law is extremely broad and vaguely defines the people, companies, and organizations that fall under its requirements for reporting, making it challenging to figure out when they even should register, or if they should at all. In order to enforce it, the Georgian government would have to enforce a vast and costly apparatus. So instead, they will likely leave it at the discretion of the authorities, which will cause harassment, especially for independent voices, watchdogs, and political opponents. So what are the protesters' demands? Well, first and foremost, they tried to break down the gates to the parliament of Tbilisi. They surrounded the building and asked the security forces to join their side. Earlier, the Georgian mass media reported that the protesters put forth their demands and gave the parliament an hour to fulfill them, to which they responded, no thank you. So what are these demands? 1. The withdrawal of the bill of foreign agents from the parliament. 2. The release of all those detained at protests. And 3, and the most immediate demand, is the immediate resignation of the Georgian parliament. And what are Georgians going to do if these demands are not met? Well, they're not going to do one thing, and that is give up. And here is a DM that I received from a follower of mine who is from Georgia. And it clearly illustrates that the Georgian people are fed up, and they're not going to let the government take over them and turn them into the same type of dictatorship as Russia is. And I wish them the utmost luck. I hope that this brief helped clarify the situation for you, and you're now a little more informed on what's happening in Georgia. With that, that's all I have for you for today, and thank you.
So I'm back. Sorry, I don't think we need like the whole 9 yards on, like on my outro in that situation. But yes, so this is what's been going on in Georgia. What's happening now is basically at that point, the parliament delayed the voting in the law and let it like simmer down. And they thought that maybe the people will forget about it. And then now they did not let the opposition vote on this law. And they basically decided to put the law forth. Georgians are not happy. So there was a question here that I really liked. And the question is from Maria, and it says, one second. I have heard another YouTuber say the one problem with the protest movement in Georgia is that they have no leadership to rally behind and to take things to the next level. What do you think? I disagree, because in Ukraine during Maidan, we had no leadership to rally behind. We wanted Yanukovych out of office and all of his henchmen out of office as well. And that's what we did. I mean, at the end of the day, he fled to Russia. He literally ran away. So what Georgians want right now is they want the resignation and the impeachment of their parliament. They do have a president. She is seemingly pro-European. They don't necessarily trust her very much because I guess she's flip-flopped in her opinion, and she sort of took like the position that was more favorable, pro-European. She's kind of like doing, she allegedly wasn't nearly as like favored by Georgian people until this had happened, and she sort of conveniently took the pro-European stance and stood with the people. So they don't really trust her a lot. But at the same time, there is opposition in Georgia. They're just not allowed to do anything because they're very they don't have enough power. But the Georgian opposition is pro-European. And I don't think you necessarily need a leader in order to have a successful uprising or in order to get your point across. So, at least looking at Maidan. So Georgia is experiencing its own sort of version of Maidan right now, right? And again, I think this is a very big flaw in Russia's thinking, where all the Russians are like, well, but all of our leaders are dead. Who are we supposed to follow? Like, you don't need a leader. You know what to do. The thing is, like, you don't need a leader. You don't need someone to walk you in hand and tell you how to protest or what to do to take down a government that's fascist, right? Like, what, do you just need some inspirational quotes? Take them from people that existed before, that inspire you, that did something in your country that helped it, you know? So I don't necessarily agree that it's not going to be taken to the next level because there isn't like the face of the campaign. I think that the face of the campaign are the people and what the people want, and they can form a new government once this one is taken down. Yeah, it's the people's movement, exactly. And it's like we didn't have a president. Our interim president was our first president ever, which is not the best decision because he wasn't great. But anyways, the same guy that we kind of, the same guy that I just talked about, who might have most likely killed a journalist. But at that point, obviously he had sorry, no political ambition. Okay. So, this is another really bad piece of news that I want to share with you. Unfortunately, almost right before I leave, but I will show you a vishanka before I leave. How do you say Georgia in Ukrainian? So, actually, the way that we used to say Georgia in Ukrainian is not an applicable way because it was imposed onto them by Russia and the Soviet Union. The real name of the country is Sakartvelo, and they want to be called Sakartvelo. So that's what we now try to call Georgia because its former name in Ukrainian derives from the Soviet Union and how the Soviet Union called it. In the northern part of the city of Vovchansk in the Kharkiv region, where fierce battles are currently taking place, the Russian invaders are taking civilians captive. There are already data about executions, said Minister of Internal Affairs of Ukraine, Ihor Klimenko. According to operational information, the Russian military, which tried to gain a foothold. Sorry, it is 1 a.m. in the city, did not allow the residents to evacuate. People began to be kidnapped and herded into basements. He noted that one of the residents of Ovchansk tried to escape on foot, refused to obey the orders of the Russians, and he was killed. The evacuation teams of the National Police continue to work in Vovchansk despite the intense fighting and are trying to ensure the further evacuation of people, the minister emphasized. And these are some of the horrendous things that happen on the occupied territories. And for these types of things, I genuinely get so incredibly furious and infuriated when stupid, not trolls, but stupid people think that, oh, but it's just a territory. Like, oh my gosh, Ukraine just wants territory. Well, first of all, it's our territory. So why wouldn't we want it back? And second of all, this is how people live in occupied territories. They're not treated as people. They're being threatened, they're being kidnapped, they're being frightened, they're being tortured, they're being blackmailed. It's awful. It is just horrible, and these people live in constant fear and in constant torture, and it's really, really, really freaking awful. The land is people. Yes, Archer, that's exactly what it is. I actually want to show you something because it's very relevant. It's an organization. It's called helpingtoleave.org. And it's an organization that helps evacuate people from prefrontal territories, from occupied territories. And they sell merch that funds their, well, I mean, you can also just donate, but they sell merch that funds these endeavors. And one of the things that they sell that they were kind of running out of when I ordered it, and it took a while for them to send it to me, but I don't mind because I just received it the other day and I was so happy to. Let me go grab yes, you can donate to it. It's called helpingtoleave.org. And I will show you because you said land is people. So they sell a hat, a very, very cool hat that says something very similar, but a little different. And give me 1 second. I'll show it to you along with the vishanka before I have to go to bed. So give me 1 moment. I'll be back. this is the hat, and the hat says territories are people. How many times have you heard me say territories are people as like a rebuttal to people saying like, oh, but it's just land? Like, no, it's not. Territories are people. And I love this hat. I will be wearing this hat literally everywhere. And this is from Helping to Leave. You can order their merch, and that's one of their merch. So this is a vishanka I was gifted today by John. He's right there, Jon, which is incredibly sweet of him. And it is a Ukrainian vishanka made on motifs from huzuls. And I believe it's from like the 18th century style, but modernized. And it's a very simple vishanka. It has traditional Ukrainian elements, which are these. The sleeves here can become these lantern sleeves, or can stay like wide. And it is literally the coolest piece of clothing I wear, and I absolutely am obsessed with it. And yeah, and it's very, very, very simple. So yeah, so it's gorgeous, and it has, see, like the bottom of the shirt is also, yeah, I'm in love with it. And literally the coolest thing I own. So yeah, hi Tone. But on this note, I do gotta go to bed. Love that it is so basic and be worn many ways. Yes, exactly. And that's the thing. It's like, I like simple things, and I like toned down things. So this was just like so me and so beautiful. You're cross stitching your vishanka right now, Veronica. That's so cool. You're so handy. Oh, hi, Lynn. Okay, you guys. I'm gonna go to bed because, as you can see, I can't stop yawning, and it is 1 a.m. and I've been going to bed at 11. So, good night, you guys. I will see you tomorrow. Thank you for keeping up, and I hope that tomorrow I'll likely join John if he still wants me to. So I'll probably see you tomorrow on there as well. Alrighty. Bye, guys.